My son told me to stay in the car during his wedding, but when the doors opened, everyone looked at me. I still remember the sound of gravel crunching under the tires as Aaron pulled the car behind the church all the way to the service entrance, the place where delivery trucks came and went. Not guests, not family. Certainly not mothers. He parked so abruptly my shoulder hit the door. He did not apologize. He never did anymore. He turned to me with eyes full of something colder than anger, something that used to frighten me back when he was a boy stomping through the house, knocking over chairs just to make noise. "You are not getting out of this car," he said. "Do you hear me?" I looked at him slowly because sudden movement seemed to irritate him these days. "Aaron, sweetheart, I came to see you get married. I just want—" He cut me off with a snarl. "You make me look bad. You always have. Stay in the car. If you step out, I will have someone drag you away like a bag of garbage." His words hit me harder than the jolt from the stop. A bag of garbage. His mother, the woman who raised him on casseroles and second-hand clothes and prayers whispered over fevered nights. I tried to steady my breath, but before I could think or speak, Madison appeared beside him in her white silk robe, her hair pinned into a crown of blonde curls and diamonds. She looked at me the way someone looks at mold on bread. "She is still dressed like that?" she scoffed. "Look at that cheap dress, that broomstick hair. A wedding like ours has no place for a leftover like her." She leaned closer to the window, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "I told you we should have left her at home. Now look, she is ruining the background of my photos just by breathing." My fingers gripped the edge of my purse. Not because I wanted to argue God knows I was tired of fighting, but because if I did not hold on to something, I might have disappeared into myself. Madison turned to a staff worker who happened to walk by. She lifted her chin like a queen, addressing a servant. "If she steps out, stop her. Sweep the dress too. It looks like it carries dust." The worker hesitated, looking at me with a mixture of apology and fear. But Madison's glare sent him scurrying. When they walked away, I sat very still in the car. The engine ticked as it cooled. The laughter from the guests floated faintly through the walls of the church. I felt like an intruder at my own child's wedding, like a stain they tried to scrub out. For a moment I thought about leaving, just opening the door, walking into the trees behind the building, and letting the whole day pass without another wound. But life rarely grants that kind of mercy. Someone tapped on my window. I turned. A young man in a navy vest stood outside, clutching a clipboard like it was a life preserver. "Ma'am," he said, "we have been looking everywhere for you. We cannot begin the ceremony without your signature." I frowned. "My signature?" He flipped the clipboard toward me. My name was on the contract, bold, unmistakable. "You are the financial guarantor. The final authorization has to come from you. Otherwise, the venue cannot legally proceed." My mind stilled, the way water goes still before it freezes. "They told me I was only helping hold the date," I whispered. The staff member shook his head. "Only you can sign. I am afraid if you do not come inside, we will have to cancel the wedding altogether." Cancel. The word echoed inside me like a bell tolling. So that was it. They hid me outside like a secret sin, but they needed me inside like a bank account. I reached for the door handle. My knees ached as I stood, but I steadied myself. "Lead the way," I said. "I only want to sign. Nothing more." I walked behind him to the side entrance. I had crossed only a few steps when shouting exploded from inside. Madison's voice, shrill enough to cut glass. "What did I say?" Her heels struck the tile as she stormed toward me. "Are you deaf? Who told you that you could cross that line?" The hallway fell quiet except for her rage. Bridesmaids stared like I had crawled out of the floor. Someone whispered, "Is that his mother?" Madison pointed at me like she was pointing at a stain on her gown. I said, "Sweep her out. Why is she standing? Why is she breathing in my hallway?" The staff member looked torn between duty and decency. He held a broom loosely, shame painting his face. "Ma'am, they told me." His voice trailed off. The moment stretched, full of humiliation and something bitter rising inside me. The kind of bitterness that forms after years of being dismissed, blamed, stepped over, and told to stay quiet. And before I stepped any further into that hall, before one more insult struck me, I remembered the promise I made to myself long ago. If no one else would defend me, then I would learn to stand. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I lifted my chin. My voice came out calm and steady. I am here to sign the contract that makes this wedding possible. Nothing more. Madison's face contorted. I said, "Get the broom, sweep her out." But this time no one moved. Not the staff, not the bridesmaids, not the guests, who began drifting into the hallway, watching the chaos unfold. And I walked forward, past the broom, past the whispers, past the shame they tried so hard to bury me under. I did not know it then, but with each step I took, the entire truth of who they were and who I still was began to crack open. I stepped into that church not because they wanted me, but because they needed me. And the moment a cruel heart needs the person it tries hardest to throw away, fate begins sharpening its knives. People like to believe hatred has a reason, but in my life it came from distortions, lies repeated until even my own son saw me through a cracked mirror. Standing in that hallway while Madison barked orders as if I were livestock, I felt decades of misunderstanding settle on me like dust no one bothered to brush off. They didn't hate me for who I was, but for who others claimed I was. When Aaron was a boy, I worked 3 jobs to keep him in a good school, hiding the bleach cracks on my hands, yet he grew up telling people I lived off him. My mother could never keep a job, he would say at parties. She depended on me for everything. He said it like a punchline. I learned about that version of me years later, when one of his friends pulled me aside and apologized. I did not get angry. I just felt the kind of tired that sinks into your bones and never leaves. Then there was the car. My old, beloved sedan with the rattling window and the seat I patched 3 times. The only car we had. Madison crashed hers while driving drunk with her friends, and her parents refused to pay the hospital bill because they were tired of enabling her mistakes. So, I sold mine. Sold it quietly. Sold it fast. I told her it was nothing, that I did not use the car much anyway. She cried and hugged me. I remember thinking that perhaps things were changing, that perhaps we would be something like family. But later, she told Aaron's relatives, she sold her car just to look like a martyr. She wanted attention. It was all an act. She twisted my sacrifice into a performance, as if I had enjoyed walking to work in the rain for months. I learned that truth the way old women learn most painful things, by overhearing whispers not meant for them. And Aaron's temper, dear Lord. When he was 17, he had an anger that frightened me. Not because he was dangerous, but because I knew where that kind of rage could lead if no one stopped it. I begged him to see a counselor, not because I believed he was broken, but because I wanted him to grow without the bitterness that had already begun to harden inside him. He told Madison a different version. My mother thinks I'm broken, he told Madison. She tried to send me to a therapist because she wants to control everything I do. Madison repeated it to her friends, and suddenly I became the hysterical old woman diagnosing everyone around her. There was also the incident that ended my career. I loved teaching special needs children, but one day a wealthy parent grabbed a student hard enough to leave marks. I reported it, and the school board silenced me. They claimed I misinterpreted everything, pushed me out quietly, and spread whispers that I was emotionally fragile. Someone told Aaron I'd been dismissed for instability, and he believed it. Lies are easier than truth. But the deepest wound came later. When Madison came to announce the engagement, I accidentally saw her kissing another man in our driveway. That night she cornered me in the kitchen and hissed, "Keep it quiet, or Aaron will believe every awful thing I say about you." And she kept her promise. I became the villain she needed. Aaron believed her. So when I walked into that church, their hatred wasn't new, just louder, wrapped in silk and lies ready to break. I never imagined that my own signature, my name, the only thing I truly owned, would become the reason I was dragged into that wedding like a stray animal someone forgot to chase away. But the truth started months before the ceremony, on a cold Tuesday morning when Aaron showed up at my house with pastries and that smile he only wore when he needed something. He sat at my table, tapping his fingers like he used to when he was trying to charm his way out of trouble as a boy. "Mom," he said sweetly, "I need just a tiny favor, nothing big, nothing stressful." When Aaron used that tone, it meant two things. He was hiding something, and I would end up paying for it one way or another. He slid a folder across the table. "It's just a credit guarantee," he said lightly. "For the venue. They won't book without it. You don't have to pay anything. You're just backing us up." I frowned. Where is Madison's family in all this? Shouldn't they be contributing? He rolled his eyes like he was already exhausted by me. "Her parents said the groom's side should handle the ceremony. Old-fashioned, you know? And I'm stretched thin, Mom. You know how hard I've been working." He hadn't been working at all. He'd been hopping between hobbies he called projects, but I didn't correct him. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Please, just your name. I swear, you'll be treated like a VIP at the wedding, front row, my special guest." That last part caught me off guard. My heart, foolish and soft, fluttered. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that somewhere beneath Madison's sneers and his coldness, there was still the boy I raised. I signed, but something in my chest felt tight, like a warning I chose not to listen to. Weeks passed. Madison never contacted me about seating, fittings, music, anything. I assumed they were busy. I assumed they would include me when the time came. I assumed wrong. 3 days before the wedding, a message popped up on my phone from the venue. It was a polite reminder about the remaining balance on the invoice. I froze. What balance? What invoice? The message had a link, "View statement." We attempted to reach the groom several times, but the only verified phone number on the contract belongs to you, ma'am. I clicked it. The total due was more money than I had seen in my bank account in a decade. My name was not in the guarantee section, it was under payer. My stomach dropped so fast I nearly slid out of my chair. Everything, venue deposit, catering, lighting, decor, was charged under my name, and the secondary payer line where Aaron should have been was blank. This wasn't a guarantee, it was a trap. A theft wrapped in trust. I checked the contract again and again. Every signature was mine because he'd flipped pages fast, distracting me with jokes, making sure I never saw the bold clause on page 6. Humiliation burned hotter than betrayal. He hadn't just excluded me from his wedding, he'd planned for me to fund my own erasure. I called him twice, voicemail. I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at the window, feeling foolish for still believing he wouldn't trick me. The next day, something hardened in me. I took out the small recorder I'd bought years ago when they began twisting my words. It became my shield, and I started carrying it everywhere. It clicked on with a soft beep as I whispered to myself, "They won't twist this one." Because I had learned something important about people like Madison and Aaron. They did not fear hurting you. They feared being exposed. Over the next 2 days, I replayed every conversation with Aaron in my mind. The pastries, the smile, the fake gentleness, the careful manipulation. He had known exactly what he was doing. He needed my signature because the venue refused to approve a contract without someone with a stable credit score, and he had ruined his with debt. Madison's parents had refused to spend $1 on any event without full control, and he chose the easiest person to exploit, me. But I was done pretending. The morning of the wedding, I dressed slowly, deliberately. In the blue dress, Louis once said, made my eyes look like a summer storm. I wore flats because my knees ached and pinned my hair back as neatly as I could. I didn't know, then, how far they were willing to go to erase me. I didn't know they would tell staff to keep me out, that they would talk about me like filth, or that Madison would order someone to sweep me out with a broom if I dared step inside. But I did know one thing. I was done being the woman they could rewrite. If they wanted a ghost, they chose the wrong mother. If they wanted silence, They should have known better. I had signed their contract. Now I was about to rewrite the terms. I walked toward the chapel, not because I wanted to be part of their celebration, but because the venue manager practically dragged me toward the entrance with desperate urgency. "Ma'am, please," she whispered. "We can't legally begin without your signature. They said you'd already signed everything, but this page is blank. I'm so sorry. Please, just come inside for a moment." So I stepped through the side entrance, clutching my purse like a fragile shield. The moment the door clicked behind me, hundreds of heads turned at once, as if someone had dragged a stray dog into a ballroom. The first voice to slice through the murmurs was Madison's. "Who let her in?" she shrieked, her heels clacking on the polished floor as she stormed toward me. Then, louder, so loud the microphone caught it and sent it echoing through the church, she screamed, "Who told this brainless old orphan to walk in here?" The guests gasped. Some of them blinked, like they weren't sure they heard correctly. Others craned their necks to get a better look at me, at the intruder. I stood still. I did not flinch. Madison's bridesmaids froze in their pastel dresses, mouths open, mascara trembling at the corners of their eyes. The groomsmen looked away awkwardly. And the guests? The guests whispered freely now, dragging their eyes up and down my body like I was a stain on the wall. "That's the groom's mother? She looks rough. Why isn't she dressed properly? She shouldn't be here." Every whisper pierced, but I stood my ground. Aaron appeared from the front row, face glowing red with embarrassment and rage. "Mom," he hissed, "what did I just tell you? Why can't you follow one simple instruction?" He jabbed a finger toward the door. "Go, leave, now." But the venue manager hurried behind me, waving the contract like a white flag of panic. "Mr. Peterson, sir, your mother has to sign the final authorization or the ceremony can't proceed. Legally, it has to be her." The room erupted with audible shock. My son blinked, confused, unprepared, cornered. Madison spun around so fast her veil whipped the air. "What?" she screeched. "You didn't tell me she had any authority here." Aaron muttered. I didn't think they'd actually check." But before he could finish, Madison turned toward the nearest staff member, an older man holding a broom at his side. I had seen him sweeping petals earlier. Now he looked terrified. "You," she barked. "What did I tell you to do if she stepped foot in here?" He swallowed hard. "Ma'am, please don't do it." Her eyes burned with hatred. "Sweep her out." A wave of horrified whispers rolled through the pews. The man bowed his head in shame and stepped toward me, broom trembling in his hands. He didn't lift it fully, just held it like he was waiting for permission to breathe. I'm sorry, ma'am," he whispered, voice cracking. They said if you came in, I had to sweep you away, like debris." The words broke something small and old inside me. But still, I did not move. The room was so silent, I could hear my own pulse. Then, from the second pew on the left, a tiny voice rose above the tension, a girl no more than 7, clinging to her mother's hand. "Mommy," she whispered loudly. "Why are they sweeping the grandma? Did she do something bad?" Her question sliced the air clean open. A murmur rippled through the chapel, shame, outrage, disgust, but this time not at me. Madison's face twisted. "Who brought their brat here?" she snapped. But the mother scooped the child into her arms and stood up. "My daughter just watched you order someone to sweep an elderly woman out of her own son's wedding," she said, voice shaking. She asked a fair question. People shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at Madison with dawning realization. Someone in the back whispered, "What kind of monster treats an old woman like that?" Another said, "Did she say orphan? Is the mother-in-law really alone?" A third muttered, "This is disgusting." Madison stomped her heel. "Stop looking at her like she's the victim. She shouldn't be here." But then she made the mistake of stepping toward me. She leaned close enough that only I could hear the venom in her words. "You think this little scene changes anything? You'll sign, and then you'll crawl out that door like the roach you are." I looked her straight in the eyes. "No." She jerked back as if slapped. "What do you mean, no?" "I will sign," I said softly, after I am treated like a human being." A loud gasp rippled through the guests. Some nodded quietly. Others watched with wide eyes, as if realizing they'd been complicit in something cruel by simply staying silent. Madison's face contorted. "Aaron," she screamed, "get your mother out of here!" But Aaron didn't move. For the first time, he looked unsure, conflicted, almost scared. His eyes darted across the room, the guests, the murmurs, the shame heating his ears. And in that moment, he finally realized. They weren't laughing at me. They were judging him. He took one step back. Madison saw it, and she panicked. "Fine," she yelled. "If you won't drag her out, somebody else will." That's when the broom dropped. The staff member let it clatter to the floor and stood straighter than before. "No," he said firmly. "I won't humiliate her. I won't be part of this." And for the first time that morning, I saw something shift in the room. Sympathy, recognition, humanity. People who had stared earlier now looked ashamed. A few guests set their programs down. One elderly man stood up. A bridesmaid stepped aside, lowering her eyes. The spell Madison held over the room began to crack, and I, still standing alone near the aisle, finally breathed. The chapel wasn't silent anymore. It was waking up. The murmurs in the chapel were still echoing waves of unease, rolling through rows of polished shoes, pastel dresses, and forced smiles when a pair of firm footsteps broke the tension. They came from the back of the chapel, steady and confident, each step striking the floor like a gavel. Then a voice, deep, controlled, and cutting through the chaos like a blade, rang out. "Who," it said, "just ordered one of my employees to sweep my mother out of my own wedding hall? Don't look so shocked. My adoptive parents never kept photos of my biological family on public records. None of my staff knows who my real mother was except me." The room froze. I turned slowly, unsure whether I had heard correctly. But every guest twisted in their seats to look toward the entrance. A young man, no older than 30, handsome in a sharply tailored charcoal suit, walked down the aisle with the authority of someone who owned not just the building, but the air people breathed inside it. His eyes swept the crowd before landing on the fallen broom on the floor, then on Madison, then on me. Madison let out a strangled gasp. "Why, you're the owner? You?" But the manager said, "He said the owner wasn't here today." "That's because," he replied evenly, "I wasn't supposed to be." He walked right past her as if she were a forgettable decoration. But my staff alerted me that a guest was being mistreated, badly. And when they described her, he paused, studying my face. "I had to come see for myself." Aaron cleared his throat, trying to reclaim some authority. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding. My mother wasn't invited to the ceremony." "Invited," the man repeated slowly, like tasting a rotten word. "Your mother is the only reason this building exists today." The whispers erupted again, louder this time. I blinked. "Son, I'm afraid you must be confusing me with someone else. I don't believe we've met." He smiled softly, not with pity, but with the warmth of someone swallowing a long-held truth. "We have," he said, "though I was a child then. And you saved my life." The air shifted. Even the walls seemed to lean closer. He turned to the guests. "My name is Luke Wright. I'm the owner of Wright and Willow Event Properties. This is my chapel, and 25 years ago, this woman pulled me out of hell." I felt the blood drain from my face. He continued, voice strong but trembling at the edges. "I was 8. My father was a violent drunk. Everyone in town knew it but pretended not to. He used belts, fists, anything he could grab. I missed school often. When I did come, I was bruised. Silent, angry. A silence spread so deep it felt sacred. And one day, after he chased me down the street with a belt right past the school, you grabbed me, wrapped your arms around me, pulled me behind you." His voice cracked. He swallowed. "You lifted me into the back of your car, into one of those big storage bins full of school supplies. You covered me with blankets and told me not to move, no matter what happened." My hands flew to my mouth. Oh God. I had forgotten the boy's face, but not the moment, not the terror, not the belt cracking against pavement as I slammed the car door and sped toward the police station. Aaron stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Madison looked disgusted. Luke went on. You risked your job to protect me, and you lost it. His throat tightened. They suspended you, then forced you out quietly because my father's family was wealthy and screamed kidnapping to protect their reputation. My knees felt weak. I didn't kidnap you. I just couldn't let him hit you again. I know, he whispered. You were the only adult in my life who protected me without asking for anything in return. Guests wiped their eyes. A bridesmaid began to cry outright. He took another step forward until he stood directly in front of me. My adoptive parents told me the truth years later. I spent years trying to find you. And today, his voice softened. Today, when they described the woman being bullied in my chapel, I knew. I came immediately. His gaze hardened as he turned toward Aaron and Madison. And I arrived to see this woman, my savior, being treated like trash. Madison sputtered. We didn't know she was connected to you. Oh, but you knew she was a human being, Luke said calmly. Or did you forget that part? Aaron clenched his jaw. This is between our family. You've interfered enough. No, Luke said sharply. You've humiliated your mother enough. He turned to his staff. Cancel the ceremony. The collective gasp nearly shook the walls. What? Madison screamed. You can't cancel my wedding. We paid. Actually, Luke cut in. She paid. He pointed at me. Every line item on the invoice is billed to her. Every deposit, every add-on. And, for the record, he inhaled sharply, she will be fully refunded, immediately, with interest. Madison staggered backward. You can't do this. I can, he said. It's my building. Aaron tried to step forward, but Luke raised a hand like a command. No groom who allows his mother to be verbally assaulted, publicly degraded, and nearly physically forced out has the right to celebrate a marriage here. He looked at me, voice soft again. Not under my roof. I felt something warm in my chest, something I had not felt in decades. Protection, respect, love. Madison snapped. You arrogant little. Do you know who my family is? Yes, Luke said coolly. Entitled, rude, and currently unwelcome. Security, please escort the bride and groom out. Gasps exploded. 2 uniformed security guards stepped forward not aggressively, but firmly, and positioned themselves beside Madison and Aaron. Madison screeched, her voice cracking into something feral. This is my day. You can't humiliate me. Luke raised an eyebrow. Humiliate you? I'm simply giving you a taste of the cruelty you tried to inflict on her. Aaron grabbed Madison's arm. Let's go, he muttered, face pale as chalk. She jerked away. No, I am not leaving because of that wrinkled. Finish that sentence, Luke said, voice like steel, and I'll have the police remove you. She swallowed her words. Aaron tugged her again. This time, she followed, fuming, shaking, humiliated. As the guards walked them toward the double doors, the chapel erupted not in applause, but in something heavier. Judgment. Shame. Whispers of good, and serves them right, and poor woman. Luke knelt beside my seat. You gave me a second chance at life, he whispered. Today, I gave one back to you. And for the first time that day, I let myself breathe. The chaos was just starting to simmer when Luke lifted his hand, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to quiet the room, and somehow it worked. Everyone sat back down. Even Madison's wild sobbing quieted, as if fear had grabbed her throat. He stepped beside me, still holding my phone. I think, he said calmly, before this goes any further, the guests deserve to hear exactly how this woman was treated today. My stomach twisted. Luke, no, you don't need to do that. He shook his head gently. You protected me when I had nothing. Today, I protect you. Then he tapped the screen. The chapel speakers crackled before playing a voice so familiar it felt like a fist slamming into my chest. Aaron's voice. You're trash. You embarrass me. Step 1 foot inside, and I'll have them drag you out like a bag of garbage." Gasps rippled across the pews, but Luke wasn't done. Another clip played, sharper, colder. Madison's voice hissed through the speakers. "Sweep that old hag out. Sweep her, and that filthy dress right off my property." People recoiled physically, as if the venom in her words had stung them where they sat. A woman near the middle whispered, "Oh my God." A man muttered, "That's disgusting." Madison clutched her veil like she wanted to rip it off. "Turn it off. Turn it off. You can't use that without my permission." Luke turned to her with a calm that made her flinch. "I don't need your permission. It's her phone, her recording, her humiliation you thought no one would ever witness." Aaron stumbled forward. "Mom recorded us? Why would you do that?" I stared at him, astonished. "Why?" I whispered. "Because you've called me trash so many times I stopped trusting my own memory. Because when someone spends years gaslighting you, you start grabbing proof to remind yourself you're not crazy." His face paled. Luke addressed the room again, voice steady and authoritative. "This wasn't a one-time outburst. This was cruelty. Planned, practiced, directed at the woman who raised him, paid for his schooling, and even paid for this wedding." The last line struck like thunder. A wave of whispers crashed through the chapel. She paid for the wedding? All of it? And he treated her like that? My God. Madison's father, who had been stiff with rising anger, finally exploded. He shot up from his seat like someone had lit a fuse beneath him. "My father mistreated my mother for years," he said, his voice shaking. "I swore I'd never allow that kind of disrespect in my family again." "That's it," he roared. "That is it." Madison jolted. Dad, wait." The man's hands trembled with fury. "You told me his mother was unstable, that she was causing problems. Not once did you mention you were the one abusing her like a playground bully." Madison's mascara streaked down her cheeks. I didn't think she'd record." "That's your excuse?" he snapped. "You didn't think she'd record?" He turned to me. "Ma'am, please accept my deepest apology. No mother should ever be spoken to like that." His wife, eyes full of shame, stood beside him and nodded. "But Madison..." Madison shook her head in disbelief, almost choking on her own panic. "Dad, please, she's making me look like a monster." "You did that yourself," he thundered. The chapel fell silent. Even the children were frozen. Aaron swallowed hard. "Sir, please don't blame Madison alone. I said things too." Madison whipped to him. You were the one who told me she was pathetic. You said she was a burden." The father held up his hand. "I don't care who said what. I'm not allowing my daughter to marry a man who speaks about his own mother that way." Madison dropped to the floor, sobbing. No, Dad. Please don't ruin this for me." He pointed at Aaron as if the heir itself were guilty. "You're not marrying into my family. Not today. Not ever." Aaron's face drained of color. "You're canceling the wedding? Because of her?" "Because of you," the father snapped. "Because you have no honor, and clearly no heart." Madison lunged toward her father, clawing at his sleeve. Please, Daddy, everyone is watching." "Yes," he said, pulling away. "Let them watch. Let them see what arrogance looks like." The groom's mother, that was me, stood motionless while a lifetime of humiliation unraveled in front of everyone. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was truth, spoken plainly in a room full of witnesses. Madison's mother stepped forward next, voice cracking. "I can't believe you spoke to her like that, Madison. She's old enough to be your own mother." Madison screamed, "Stop it. Stop ganging up on me." But no one defended her. No bridesmaid, no groomsman, not even Aaron. Especially not Aaron. Instead, he muttered under his breath, "This wasn't supposed to happen." Luke lifted the phone one more time. "We're not done." Aaron's head snapped up. "What else do you have?" "The part," Luke said, "where you laugh about leaving your mother in the parking lot." He pressed play. Aaron's voice flooded the speakers. "She'll stay in the car. She always does. pathetic old woman. The chapel erupted in outrage. A grandmother in the second row shook her head fiercely. "How dare you talk about your mother that way?" A teenage guest murmured, "If I spoke to my mom like that, I'd be dead." A woman whispered to her husband, "Cancel the wedding." I'd cancel the son. But the final blow didn't come from the guests. It came from the bride's father. He pointed at the two of them like he was staring at filth on the bottom of his shoe. "Wedding's off. Marriage is off. Engagement is off. Everything is off. You two don't deserve to share a room, let alone a future." Madison collapsed fully now, mascara smeared, lipstick bleeding, veil crooked. She was sobbing uncontrollably. Aaron dropped into a pew as if his legs had melted. And for the first time all day, the entire chapel looked at me not as an inconvenience, not as a burden, not as an embarrassment, but as a woman who had survived far worse than their judgment. Luke stepped gently beside me. "You didn't raise your voice," he whispered, "and still you won." I exhaled slowly, my chest finally loosening. "No," I said softly, "I didn't win." I looked at Madison, crumpled and shaking. At Aaron, silent and ashamed. The truth did. The chapel, once so full of resentment toward me now, felt like it belonged to me again, because everyone finally saw what I had lived with, and they couldn't unsee it. I thought the chaos inside the chapel was the climax. I thought the shattering of their wedding day, the public humiliation, the engagement torn apart, was the worst that could happen. I was wrong. Because life has a way of collecting debts slowly and then demanding them all at once. 3 days after the ruined wedding, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. The caller ID surprised me. "Wright and Willow Event Properties." "Luke," I answered immediately. "Is something wrong?" His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Nothing's wrong on your end, ma'am. But Aaron is about to have a very difficult morning." I sat up. "What happened now?" "I sent the audio recording," he said, "to the bank handling his mortgage application." My breath caught. "Aaron applied for a new loan?" I asked. "He did," Luke replied. "A large one, to refinance his current home and consolidate his wedding expenses. But the bank reviews character reports and public behavior." There was a brief pause. "And what he did to you," Luke said, "is now part of his public behavior." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I whispered, "So, what does that mean?" Luke answered without hesitation. "It means the loan is gone, permanently. They flagged him as high risk and unfit for credit approval." I closed my eyes. Not because it pleased me, though a small part of me did feel the satisfaction he had never allowed me, but because the universe had finally handed him a consequence he couldn't dodge with charm or cruelty. "When he finds out," Luke added, "he'll blame you." "I know," I said, "but I stopped living my life in fear of his disappointment a long time ago." "And now," Luke replied gently, "he gets to live in the consequences he created." That afternoon, a former wedding guest sent me a link to the video. Groom calls his elderly mother trash. Owner shuts down wedding. Over 2.4 million views in 2 days. My hands shook as I watched. Aaron screaming at me in the parking lot, Madison ordering staff to sweep me out, the audio blasting through the chapel, the bride's father canceling everything. And me, standing there, hurt but unbroken. The comments flooded fast. "This is why you treat people with dignity. Poor woman. The son is heartless. Owner handled this like a king. I hope she cuts them off forever. I'd disown a son like that." I felt no joy. But I did feel seen. For the first time in many years, strangers believed me, defended me, spoke for me in ways my own son never had. Then the next blow arrived, not to me, but to him. At 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, from an unknown number, a monotone voice. "Is this Mrs. Caldwell? We're calling regarding your son, Aaron Caldwell." My stomach tightened. "Yes," I said. "Is something wrong?" The man cleared his throat. "We've seen the video circulating. The statements he made toward you are unacceptable. Our company has strict ethical guidelines regarding harassment, elder abuse, and public conduct." I already knew what was coming. The man finished. "We regret to inform you that Aaron has been terminated effective immediately." I let out a long, slow breath. "He's going to blame me," I whispered. "Ma'am," the man said gently, "this wasn't your fault." But we both knew Aaron would never see it that way. Not when accountability had always been someone else's burden. That evening, the storm reached its final target, Madison. Her mother came to my door, eyes red, face blotchy, clutching tissues like they were lifelines. She looked broken in a way only embarrassment could create. "I'm so sorry," she said before I could speak. "For everything she did, for everything she said." I nodded politely, unsure why she had come. Then she explained. "Madison has been seeing someone new since the breakup, a wealthy man, older, from a very esteemed family." Her voice wavered. "He saw the wedding video." "Oh," I said softly. "But it didn't end there." "He hired a private investigator," she whispered, "to make sure she wasn't a risk to his reputation." She trembled. "And they uncovered something. Something from years ago." My stomach tightened. "Her affair?" I said quietly. "The one I witnessed." She froze. "You knew?" "Yes," I said. "I never told Aaron. She threatened me if I did." Her mother's face collapsed. "His family saw the report. They sent her a letter. They don't want anything to do with her." I exhaled slowly. "What did the letter say?" The mother swallowed painfully. "It said, 'Your character is incompatible with ours.'" A harsh but fitting sentence. "Is she all right?" I asked, even though part of me knew she wasn't my responsibility. "She's devastated," the mother whispered. "She said she's lost everything. Her engagement, her new relationship, her reputation, and she said it all started the moment she tried to sweep you out of that chapel." I closed my eyes. Actions, consequences, patterns, they always come home. By the end of the week, Aaron had no wedding, no house loan, no job, no fiancé. Madison had no wedding, no new wealthy boyfriend, no reputation. And I had something I never expected, peace. Not revenge, not triumph, not satisfaction in their ruin, just peace. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to defend my truth. I didn't have to endure their cruelty in silence. The world saw, the world judged, and the world answered in my place. Consequences didn't come with fire or rage, they came quietly. I simply stepped aside and watched the truth do the work I had been too tired to do for years, and the truth has never failed anyone. I always thought the story would end with consequences alone, with the wedding ruined, the truth exposed, and the two cruel hearts who mistreated me finally forced to swallow the bitterness they had served me for years. But life wasn't finished writing my ending yet. It had one more quiet truth to give me. 3 weeks after that day in the chapel, I received a message from Luke. It read, "Come to the chapel on Saturday. Wear something you love." I stared at the text for a long moment. No one had invited me anywhere in years, much less to something where I was told to wear something I love. My hands shook a little as I laid out my pale blue dress, simple, soft, bought long ago for an occasion that never came. Somehow, it felt right for whatever waited for me. When I approached the chapel that Saturday afternoon, I expected the cold sting of memory, the place where they once tried to sweep me out like trash, but instead, warm light spilled from the doors, and gentle music drifted into the evening air. As I stepped inside, something astonishing happened. Every single person in that room stood up and applauded. Not politely, not stiffly, but with real emotion, the kind people save for moments when they recognize a survivor walking through the fire. I froze in the doorway, too overwhelmed to breathe, until Luke walked toward me, his smile soft and reverent. "Welcome," he said. "Today is for you." I shook my head in disbelief. "For me? Why, sweetheart?" He led me down the aisle as though I were royalty. "For the woman who saved us," he whispered. "For the teacher who believed in the children no one else believed in. For the person who changed more lives than she ever knew." My breath trembled as I looked around the room. Faces I had not seen in decades stared back at me, glowing with recognition. Grown adults who had once been little frightened children in my classroom stepped forward, one after another. A woman in her 40s told me, "You were the first person who ever said I was smart." A man said, "You gave me lunches when I didn't have any." Another whispered, "You saved my life." I never forgot. One woman hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "My son wouldn't have made it if you hadn't helped him," she said. "You were our angel." I felt my knees weaken as more voices joined in, sharing stories I had long forgotten. I had spent so many years thinking I was invisible, a burden, a shadow no one wanted the way Aaron and Madison always made sure I believed. But standing there, wrapped in the love of people whose lives I had unknowingly shaped, I realized the truth. I had never been the burden. I was the blessing. Later that night, I stepped outside the chapel for some air. The sky shimmered with the warm glow of sunset. That was when I heard footsteps approach behind me. "Mom?" "Aaron." He looked smaller than I remembered, worn down, eyes red with sleeplessness. I didn't turn right away. I wasn't ready, not fully. He stepped beside me anyway, voice cracking. "Mom, I'm sorry." I stayed silent. He swallowed hard. "I lost everything. My job, the house. Madison's gone. And I've had a lot of time to think." His breath shuddered. "I treated you like trash. I let her treat you even worse. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want a chance to fix it." I looked at him then, not as a mother desperate for her child's love, not as a victim of his cruelty, but simply as a woman facing someone who had broken her and was now finally seeing the pieces. "Aaron," I said quietly, "I don't hate you." His face crumpled with relief. "But," I continued gently, "I'm not going back to a place where I was treated like garbage. I deserve better. And I will not apologize for wanting peace," he whispered. "But I'm your son. And I'm your mother," I replied. "A mother you nearly swept out of your life like dirt. If you want a relationship, rebuild yourself first. Respect must come before forgiveness." He nodded slowly, tears falling, and for once, I let him cry alone. Some lessons are only learned in silence. When I returned inside, Luke was waiting with a small velvet pouch. He pressed it gently into my hand. "This is for you," he said. I told him I didn't need anything, but he smiled. "I know. That's why you deserve it." I opened the pouch and gasped. Inside was a silver key. My hands shook. "Luke, what is this?" He spoke softly. "A place of your own. Safe, quiet, warm. A furnished apartment, paid for a year. No one to insult you, no one to dismiss you. Just peace." Tears flooded my vision. "Why would you do this for me?" I asked. He placed his hand over mine. "Because you saved me when I was a child, and now it's my turn to give you a life where you never have to shrink yourself again." I walked outside with that key pressed against my heart. The garden behind the chapel shimmered in the last gold of sunset. For the first time in 20 long years, the world felt gentle again. The wind brushed my hair. Voices of the people I once helped floated behind me, and I felt something bloom inside my chest, something I thought had died long ago. My heart softened, breathed, expanded. And there, under the fading sky, I finally understood. Peace isn't loud. It isn't triumphant. It is steady, quiet, earned, mine. So I lifted my chin and whispered into the warm evening air, "My heart finally has a place to come home to, and no one can ever sweep me out of it again." Thank you for sitting with me through this story, sweetheart. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength or your own quiet battles, I'd love for you to stay a little longer. There are so many stories left to tell, stories about women who were underestimated, overlooked, silenced, and then found their voices again. So, if you want to keep walking with me, darling, go ahead and subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Join our Porchlight community, where every tale is told with truth, tenderness, and a little bit of fire. Your presence means more to me than you know. Until next time, be gentle with your heart, be firm with your boundaries, and never let anyone decide your worth for you. Grandma loves you, dear, and I'll be right here, waiting for you in the next story.